Welcome to G102 Gendl Quickstart. This is the introduction, and you can see the URL for the slides on the screen.
So Gendl is a declarative, dynamic, object-oriented language embedded in Common Lisp. We say language, or we should really say language environment, because it's an entire environment. It's a language and an interpreter, a compiler, and a whole runtime system, almost like an operating system of its own, sitting on top of Windows or Linux or Mac or whatever you are running as your main computer operating system. It's a technology that allows any type of engineer to apply
Powerful techniques to solving
to their problems. Now, what does dynamic, declarative, object-oriented mean? Dynamic is as opposed to static. So dynamic means changeable. Things can change. For example, you can change code definitions and compile and load them and use them without restarting your model or your program from scratch. You can define variables without having to define what the data type is ahead of time. So a piece of data could start out as an integer and then become a fraction, a rational number, then become a floating point number, and end up as a string finally. That's possible in a dynamic environment. It makes for much faster, rapid prototyping and development. And there are ways of minimizing the downsides of this. Modify slot values. You can even modify object types at runtime. So primitive data types as well as higher level primitive object types. Declarative, the main idea with declarative is that definitions do not have a begin or an end. They're simply a descriptive definition. You don't have to read through it in a procedural manner like you do with a normal computer program with a begin, next, 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 finally end. As far as object-oriented, all the standard object-oriented features are there, plus several advanced ones, which you don't find in every object system. A clear separation between definition of an object and an instance. Multiple inheritance, so one definition can inherit or take on characteristics from several superclasses. We have a message passing style. Gendl also supports a generic function style, which is a more general but probably harder to use type of object orientation. So message passing style is a simple, and that's the way that engineers normally think. It's object-centric. You think of objects as this at the center, and what messages do they answer? In other words, what pieces of information can they compute about themselves? Meta-object protocol means that definitions themselves are also treated as objects. So a definition is also an instance of a higher level meta-object. That's not something you normally have to care about, but it's a powerful abstraction that makes a lot of difference as far as implementation of a language like Gendl. And finally, reflection, deep reflection, the ability for an object to look into itself and see its own documentation, be able to produce its own source code